While climate activists around the world are clashing with governments to opt for a more sustainable way of living, Qatar has now signed a $6 billion deal with chemical producer Chevron to convert natural gas into polyethylene.
Qatar is expecting economy to contract this year after it shrank by 0.3% last year.
West Asia's top mediator is back in duty. Qatar has once again worn its diplomatic robe.
Today, we delve into the complexities of Qatar's unique position in the international arena, exploring its diplomatic maneuvers, economic prowess, and geopolitical significance. From the bustling streets of Doha to the corridors of power, we'll uncover the fascinating dynamics shaping Qatar's role on the world stage. Stay tuned for an in-depth analysis of Qatar's strategic decisions and their implications for regional and global politics. In Doha, amidst luxurious hotels, bustling liquor stores, beachfront developments, and landmarks like the Formula One racetrack, a Cheesecake Factory outpost, and World Cup stadiums, lies the political headquarters of Hamas. While its exact location remains unclear, a video surfaced showing the movement's political leader, Ismail Haniyeh, praying in a Doha office while their paramilitary forces breached Israel's defenses, resulting in casualties and hostages. Interestingly, just a few miles away from this scene, nearly 10,000 U.S. military personnel are stationed at Al Udeid Air Base. In a curious juxtaposition, troops at this base later loaded C-17 aircraft with bombs, which were flown to Cyprus and then to Israel, ultimately contributing to the IDF's offensive in Gaza aimed at eradicating Hamas. The situation where key adversaries in a conflict can casually interact in a local setting, like a supermarket, is quite surreal. In Qatar, this dynamic is particularly striking due to its hosting of both the U.S. military presence centered around Al Udeid Air Base, which serves as the headquarters for U.S. Central Command in the region, and Hamas, a group with whom the U.S. has significant differences. Qatar actively sought both entities' presence, inviting Hamas to establish a political office in Doha in 2012, reportedly in competition with the UAE. Qatar also provides substantial financial support to Gaza, including funding public sector salaries in the Hamas-run government. This juxtaposition of seemingly opposing forces living peacefully within the same city, such as Doha, is not uncommon. The Taliban, adversaries of the U.S. during the two-decade conflict in Afghanistan, established an office in Doha in 2013, also at the invitation of the Qatari government. In another instance, the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus, which lacks international recognition, operates an office just a brief walk away from the recognized Cyprus embassy. On the island itself, the two nations are separated by a demilitarized zone monitored by UN peacekeeping units. Additionally, Qatar hosts embassies for both Saudi Arabia and Iran, despite their long-standing proxy conflict across the Middle East. These diplomatic peculiarities are not accidental, but rather deliberate aspects of Qatar's foreign policy. The country seeks strength through neutrality, believing that inserting itself into conflicts can actually help avoid direct involvement. Qatar aspires to emulate Switzerland's stance of staunch neutrality in regional conflicts, while also actively engaging in diplomatic endeavors across the board. Given the volatile nature of the Middle East, Qatar perceives such maneuvers as essential, recognizing its inherent vulnerability amidst stronger regional powers. Qatar faces a significant challenge due to its scarcity of fresh water. Despite its small size, comparable to Connecticut, the country lacks natural water sources like rivers or lakes, receiving minimal rainfall annually. To compensate, Qatar heavily invests in desalination plants, wells, and artificial reservoirs to extract, treat, and store water for its inhabitants. However, this process is costly, although Qatari citizens enjoy free water utilities, resulting in high domestic water usage per capita, among the highest globally. This reliance on water places Qatar among the top 5 most water-stressed nations annually. While Qatar boasts extreme wealth, providing free utilities is easier when only a fraction of the population holds citizenship. With approximately 11% of the 2.7 million inhabitants being Qatari, the majority are expatriates, mainly low-wage laborers. This influx has caused Qatar's population to soar more than fourfold since 2000, exacerbating the challenge of its limited arable land, which hovers between 1 and 2%. Lacking agricultural capability, Qatar imports 90% of its food from various countries, ranging from nearby Turkey to as far as the US and Canada. This reliance on imports is further fueled by increasing demand for costly items like fresh beef, frozen meats, and baked goods. Consequently, Qatar heavily depends on the global community for basic necessities, including food and labor for managing its complex water infrastructure. Despite its vulnerabilities, Qatar offers valuable assets to the world, contributing to its stability and positioning itself as a significant player in global affairs. In terms of proven reserves, Qatar ranks third globally in natural gas and is the third largest exporter of liquefied natural gas, LNG, trailing only the US and Australia. This achievement can largely be attributed to a significant geographical advantage, the North Field, located within Qatar's exclusive economic zone. Despite Qatar's relatively small size compared to countries like the US, Iran, and Russia, its production levels surpass many larger nations, showcasing remarkable vision and strategic planning initiated in the 1990s under the leadership of Hamad bin Khalifa Al Thani. One of the challenges in the natural gas industry is transportation due to its gaseous state. However, converting it into LNG makes it safer, denser, and more economically viable for export via pipelines or tankers to distant markets. This transformation requires substantial upfront investments in processing plants, pipelines, and specialized refrigerated tankers, particularly for a country like Qatar, which is far from major demand centers. Undeterred by these challenges, in 1996, the Amir spearheaded the establishment of an industrial city to facilitate LNG production and export. Located north of Doha, Ras Laffan, once a modest area with limited pearling potential, has transformed into the epicenter of Qatar's natural gas economy. Along its coast, major players in the energy industry, including Qatar Gas, UAE's Dolphin Energy, and multinational corporations like Chevron and Shell, have established a significant presence, solidifying Qatar's position as a global leader in LNG production and export. Today, with 6 high-capacity production facilities, known as megatrains, and 8 lower-output trains, this once desolate corner of Qatar churns out 77 million metric tons of natural gas annually. Additional production facilities are in the pipeline, bringing Qatar's output close to matching the combined production of the next 3 highest-producing countries. The natural gas industry not only explains Qatar's rapid population growth and construction boom, but also the emergence of its gleaming capital city, Doha. Qatar's remarkable GDP per capita growth from 2000 to 2010 can also be attributed to its natural gas wealth. However, it's important to note that Qatar's transformation into a global player wasn't solely due to its gas reserves. Despite having similar fossil fuel endowments, neighboring countries like Kuwait, Bahrain, Iraq, and Azerbaijan haven't achieved Qatar's level of geopolitical strength and influence. Qatar's exceptional status is the result of deliberate, proactive planning and strategic initiatives. Qatar recognized the need for a distinct and essential identity, which led to the establishment of various institutions. These efforts range from conventional alliance-building strategies, such as hosting the Al Udeid Air Base and being a founding member of the Gulf Cooperation Council, to more innovative initiatives. These include hosting prestigious sporting events like the Asia Games in 2006 and the upcoming World Cup in 2022, as well as funding Al Jazeera, one of the world's largest news networks. Founded in the 1990s with support from the Emir and staffed by BBC-trained journalists, Al Jazeera has grown to reach over 300 million households globally. It has earned trust, particularly in a region where most news outlets are tightly controlled by the state. Al Jazeera provides a more balanced and nuanced perspective, especially on topics unrelated to Qatar. While this approach has irked Middle Eastern royal families, it has endeared Qatar to the public, who view it as a reliable source of regional news, rather than merely a mouthpiece for American military interests. Since the mid-1990s, alongside the growth and prestige of Al Jazeera, Qatar Airways has emerged as a significant player. Owned entirely by the state, Qatar Airways has been recognized as the world's best airline 7 times since 2010. The airline's commitment to punctuality, safety, cleanliness, and modernity reflects not only its own brand, but also represents the nation itself, driving it to maintain excellence. Beyond aviation, Qatar has invested in various institutions, including PSG, a prominent football club, which they have propelled to the heights of European football through significant player investments. Qatar's footprint extends to infrastructure projects like Heathrow Airport, the Shard, and numerous real estate ventures across Britain, spanning from high-rises to industrial parks. Across sectors like media, entertainment, real estate, and travel, Qatar's presence is pervasive, offering services that people rely on and associate with the nation, positioning it as irreplaceable, indispensable, and therefore untouchable on the global stage. As Qatar aimed to solidify its unique status, it recognized the need to engage in politics. It formulated a foreign policy of neutrality, setting itself apart from neighboring states. However, navigating neutrality proved challenging, especially amidst the conflict between Saudi Arabia and Iran, where Qatar struggled to maintain a truly neutral stance accepted by all parties. Historically, Qatar's position was largely aligned with Saudi Arabia, given its geographical proximity and economic dependence. However, under the leadership of Sheikh Hamad bin Khalifa Al Thani, Qatar began steering towards a perception of neutrality, fueled by newfound oil and gas reserves. Although Qatar had maintained a relatively neutral stance towards Iran compared to Saudi Arabia, the discovery and development of the North Field led to closer ties between Qatar and Iran, which refers to the field as South Pars. The decision to grant the U.S. military presence in Qatar, following Saudi Arabia's refusal to host U.S. operations during the Iraq War, strategically bolstered Qatar's position. With both financial resources and enhanced security, Qatar felt less vulnerable to Saudi pressure, affording it a sense of untouchability. Al Jazeera's rise in global and regional prominence during the early 2000s was partly due to its exceptional access to countries involved in US-led wars and its politically independent coverage of regional issues. The channel's frequent criticism of the Saudi regime and its platforming of dissidents drew ire from Saudi Arabia, leading to the recall of their ambassador to Qatar in 2002. This move was seen as a response not just to Al Jazeera's coverage, but also to Qatar's growing independence. Although diplomatic relations improved slightly in 2008, tensions resurfaced in 2014 over Qatar's refusal to sign a multilateral agreement. In 2017, a sudden announcement by Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Egypt, Bahrain, and other allies declared the complete severance of diplomatic ties with Qatar, closing airspace, waters, and land borders. This blockade had profound economic implications for Qatar. Qatar Airways, once a profitable airline, was forced to reroute its flights through designated corridors, significantly increasing travel time and costs. The closure of the land border with Saudi Arabia disrupted crucial supply chains, leading to production slowdowns and layoffs. Despite the blockading group's demands, including reducing relations with Iran and shutting down Al Jazeera, Qatar refused to concede. Instead, it deepened economic ties with Iran and Turkey, moving towards self-sufficiency and geopolitical independence. Ultimately, Qatar emerged from the blockade largely unscathed, demonstrating resilience and successfully navigating towards its desired position of self-sufficiency and indispensability. Thank you for joining us on this insightful exploration of Qatar's unique position in the international arena